The Commission on Chicago Landmarks Program Committee is now called to order. Okay, Dan, do you have another copy? Thank you. On Chicago Landmarks Program Committee is now called to order. My name is the Reverend Dr. Richard Tolliver. I'm a member of the commission and serve as chair of the program committee. I will be presiding over the meeting today. My fellow commissioner, Sue Ellen Burns, also serves on the program committee. Commissioner Burns, would you please introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here.
You bet. The program committee is a standing committee of the Commission on Chicago Landmarks. Main purposes are to hear about Chicago nominations for National Register of Historic Places and public suggestions for new Chicago landmark designations. The committee will first review 2 nominations for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. After this, we will review 7 suggestions submitted for Chicago landmark designation. I would like to give some background about the commission's review of National Register nominations. The National Register is a federal program that recognizes historically and architecturally significant properties. The commission gets a chance to review, comment on National Register nominations for Chicago properties because Chicago is a certified local government under the National Historic Preservation Act. The program committee will make recommendations to the full commission on Chicago landmarks, and any commission votes recommending nominations will be forwarded to the Illinois Historic Sites Advisory Council. Today, we will be considering 2 National Register nominations. I will call the name of the person making the presentation. After they are done, I will ask if any members of the general public would like to speak. If property owners are present, please use this opportunity to say a few words should you so desire. The first nomination is for the Royalton Hotel at 1810 West Jackson Boulevard. The nomination was prepared by John Kramer of Ramsey Historic Consultants, Inc. Mr. Kramer will be presenting. I ask that you keep your presentation to between 3 and 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Yes, my name is John Kramer with Ramsey Historic Consultants in Chicago, and today I'll be presenting the National Register nomination for the Royalton Hotel at 1810 West Jackson Boulevard in Chicago. Maybe I'll click there. Now. The Royalton Hotel is located at 1810 West Jackson Boulevard on Chicago's near west side. So use this. Okay, great. Thanks. All right, back on track. The Royalton is located just east of Malcolm X College on Jackson Boulevard, and just north of the Fifth Third Bank, Chicago Blackhawks Community Ice Rink, and then just north across Interstate 290 from the Illinois Medical District, and then the United Center is directly to the north. We are nominating the Royalton Hotel today under National Register Criterion C for architecture as an excellent and well-preserved example of a residential rooming hotel, which is a type of residential hotel constructed in Chicago between 1910 and 1930. The building meets the registration requirements as part of the multiple property documentation form, the MPD, for residential hotels in Chicago, 1880 to 1930, which was approved by the National Park Service in 2017. The building's architect was Edmund J. Mellies, who also designed many other Chicago apartment hotels in the 1920s. And the period of significance is 1926, which is the year of its completion. The building is located 2 miles west of Chicago's Loop downtown Central Business District at the center of the near West Side neighborhood. While the neighborhood was a low density residential community up to the 1880s, by the 1920s, when the Royalton was constructed, the near West Side was the city's largest industrial district and was a mix of industrial plants and warehouses, busy commercial thoroughfares, apartment buildings, and rooming hotels like the Royalton. This is a view of the Marshfield L station. Doesn't exist anymore, but this was about a block and a half southeast of the Royalton, so you can tell the kind of neighborhood setting it was in. And then the Royalton was also just north of the growing medical district. And in fact, when it was built, the Royalton housed mostly medical workers, so doctors, nurses, interns. The Royalton was one of several apartment hotels built in the 20s by attorney and developer Benjamin E. Cohen, and designed by the same architect, Edmund J. Mellies. These three buildings have come before the commission and the program committee before, all designed by Mellies and developed by Cohen. So the Royalton that we're talking about today from 1926, and then the Marshall and the Carling hotels from 1927. And you can see the Royalton and the Carling are nearly identical in design. And all three of these, well, 2 of them, the Carling and the Marshall, have been listed in the National Register. A little look at the neighborhood around the Royalton when it was constructed. You can see that the Royalton historically sat next to other rooming hotels, smaller residential buildings, warehouses, and industrial facilities. The construction of the Royalton was mentioned, as we see in the Daily National Hotel Reporter, which mentioned its convenient location near the Marshfield L station in the medical district. And then this article and then later advertisements for the Royalton mention its hotel rooms, each with showers, and some still have showers, and a few still have toilets en suite, but most of the residents would have used shared bathrooms. Rooming hotels like the Royalton Hotel offered residents daily, weekly, or monthly rates and welcomed both transients and permanent residents. Hotel rooms were typically single rooms. They were furnished. Some had private baths, as I said, but most had shared toilets and sinks and showers in a separate kind of shared bathroom. By hotel service, in quotes, that meant maid service, laundry service. There was an elevator in this building, and there were also meal services in this building. There was a restaurant in a lower space that's now used as a multi-purpose space. And US Census records from the 30s, 40s, and 50s show that actually most of the guests weren't sort of transient, only staying there a short time. Most actually made the Royalton their permanent home. And most residents lived either alone or with their spouses. Most guests from this period cite the Midwest as their birthplace, though many were foreign-born, mostly from Europe, both Western and Eastern Europe. Doctors, interns, and nurses lived at the Royalton in the early days, but by the 1940s, most were in non-medical fields. Most residents were, all early residents were recorded as white, but by the 1950s, the Royalton Hotel was open for business to Black customers as well. And from 1957 to 1967, the hotel was included in several green books, which were travel guides for African-American travelers, published annually, included listings of hotels, restaurants, gas stations, garages, and other businesses that were willing to serve Black travelers. As I noted earlier, the Royalton meets the requirements, registration requirements developed as part of the MPD for Residential Hotels of Chicago, 1880 to 1930. The MPD outlines the requirements for National Register listing for residential hotels like the Royalton, and these are some of the requirements here. Specifically, the Royalton Hotel is a rooming hotel, which is kind of like a sub type of apartment hotel that were built. Rooming hotels were built primarily to serve the army of skilled but low-paid white and blue collar workers flooding into Chicago in the
Excuse me,
early
you've
decades.
spoken 5 minutes, so you need to.
I'm gonna wrap it up. I will skip ahead to just a little tour. So we see Malcolm X down the street. There's the Royalton right there in the middle. Looking the other way, John Jackson. Here's a typical plan. Well, sorry, this is the first floor plan you enter from Jackson. We've got a lounge that we'll see here. That's always important in these rooming hotels. This is where the restaurant would have been. And then we have, you see these small kind of units with showers and then a shared bathroom on each floor.
I was just told for the National Register presentations, you can speak a little longer for the suggestions. It's a maximum
I
of 5
understand.
minutes.
Understood. Just let's walk through the first floor really fast. You can see it retains its reception desk. It's over here. Here's the lounge. Here's that multi-purpose space that used to be a small restaurant. And then we're going to see a lot of pictures that all look the same. The first floor and all the upper floors have these shared double-loaded corridors. There are 3 stairwells. Here's a very, a typical floor plan for the upper floors. It's all there. And then a few typical images of a residential unit. All right. This National Register nomination is being prepared as part of a federal historic tax credit application. The building is going to remain affordable housing with the public spaces refreshed and units receiving individual ensuite bathrooms and kitchenettes for continued housing use. And I'm ready to answer any questions if you have them.
Commissioner Burns, do you have any questions?
No.
Are there members of the general public who have questions? Not, I'd like to call for a vote on whether to recommend listing the Royalton Hotel on the National Register to the full commission.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Thanks. The second National Register item is a listing for the Werner Brothers Storage Warehouse number 6 at 7613 North Paulina Street. The nomination was prepared by Emily Ramsey of Ramsey Historic Consultants, Inc., and John Creamer will be presenting it. John Creamer, is he here?
Great. Okay.
Oh, same, John,
Yeah. That's me.
different hat.
All righty. Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, that's fine. All righty. Thanks once again. I'm John Creamer with Ramsey Historic, and I'm presenting the National Register nomination for the Werner Brothers Storage Warehouse number 6. The Werner is located in Chicago's Rogers Park community area, just north of Howard Avenue and the Howard Avenue CTA Red Line stop. The Werner Warehouse is locally significant under National Register Criterion C for architecture as a well-preserved example of a storage warehouse, which is a distinct building type developed in the late 19th, early 20th centuries to provide secure and fireproof storage and moving services for furniture and household goods. The building, by the way, is an orange rated building in the Chicago Historic Resources Survey. The architect was George Kingsley, and the period of significance is the year it was completed in 1922. The Werner Storage Warehouse was constructed in the time of great expansion of Chicago's storage warehouse and transfer industry, which arose in the 19th century as a response to the city's increasingly mobile and affluent population. Household goods storage and transfer buildings like these emerged as part of a distinct industry in the US as industrialization created more mass sold products. Families were acquiring more of these products and holding on to them, and an increasingly mobile population needed places to either temporarily or permanently store all of their belongings, or many of their belongings. So buildings like the Werner Storage Warehouse, this purpose-built household goods storage building type developed to accommodate that new early 20th century need for storage. During the first decades of the 20th century, architects, engineers, and storage companies established the basic components of this modern fireproof storage warehouse building type, which was designed to address security and safety concerns, but also aimed to increase efficiency in loading, packing, and storing to maximize profits for the business owners. Storage warehouses like the Werner warehouse were constructed of fire-resistant materials like reinforced concrete. Window openings were typically small and limited to the front and rear elevations only. That was both for fire safety and of course for security as well. And inside there was usually a nicer sort of public facing lobby space and office space that where the businesses could actually interface with the public, and then upstairs would have been completely utilitarian where the goods were stored. And very often, as we'll see at Werner Storage, the architects of these buildings added retail spaces as well to bring in extra income and to bring more people into the building. And you can see, what is really unique about Werner Storage is that the facades, the street-facing facades of these buildings really became sort of a billboard for these growing companies. The Werner Storage Warehouse was the Werner Brothers' sixth location in Chicago. The company was founded in 1892 by Swedish immigrant brothers Eric and Emil Werner. And the Werner Brothers started one of the earliest moving and storage businesses in Chicago. And by 1920, they had 6 storage warehouses on the north side of Chicago. 3 exist. So one of them is number 6 that we're talking about today. And these are the other 2. So we see the one on Broadway here. This was purpose built for the Werners, and then this old stable for Marshall Field and Company built in 1902 was repurposed by Werner for storage. Number 6, the one we're talking about today, had its construction begin in October of 1921, was completed by the summer of the following year. You can see Werner's took out a full-page ad in the Chicago Tribune. They announced Chicago's most beautiful warehouse with large photos of the building's exterior and its lobby. The second floor offered climate-controlled rooms for piano storage. That was important. And then upstairs was not climate-controlled, but was sort of a rabbit warren of secured spaces for smaller goods. Eric Werner died just before this building was completed. And the business eventually changed hands the following year, was sold to Martin H. Kennelly, and the building was renamed, the company was renamed Werner Brothers Kennelly Warehouse Company. And of course, Martin Kennelly was better known for his tenure as Chicago mayor from 1947 to 1955. The Werner's choice of architect, George Kingsley, was a natural choice. He designed, he's really specialized in warehouse design from the 1910s and 1920s. He began his work primarily designing residences, but again, by the 20s, he was really known in Chicago as a warehouse architect. And his best known work is the Reeby Storage Warehouse at 2325 to 2333 North Clark Street, which of course is a fabulous example of the Egyptian revival. Probably the best known storage warehouse in Chicago. Now for a quick tour. So we see the Werner Brothers here on Paulina on the east side of the street. There's a parking lot around that wraps around the side and back. So we'll be able to look at all those facades. So we see the front with this great Renaissance revival facade with beautiful terracotta base. You can see the reinforced concrete frame on the north parking lot facade. Then you can see a little loading and delivery area at the back here. So here's the first floor plan with retail spaces at each side, and then here's the main lobby here in the center. Here's a great view of the double height main lobby. These openings on the second floor were clear glass, so you could actually see the pianos and other, more sensitive household goods that were stored up there in the climate control rooms. And then upstairs, this is the second floor. Just a quick view of that. So this is the climate control area. And then upstairs was just pretty much open with a center stairwell, a freight elevator at the southeast corner, and very utilitarian interior. Like the Royalton, this National Register nomination is being prepared as part of a federal historic tax credit project. The plan is to convert this building to affordable housing. And I am available to answer any questions.
Mr. Burns, do you have any questions? I have one question. When you say convert to affordable housing, what income mix are you referring to?
I don't know. The owners aren't here, but we can certainly get that answer for you if you need it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Does the general public have it? Yes.
Yes, hi, Ward Miller with Preservation Chicago. Just want to say that Warner Brothers building was one of our 2023 Chicago 7 most endangered buildings. And we're very pleased to see that this has been picked up. It's a gorgeous structure, and we're really happy to see that it's going to be repurposed as a part of a larger development. So this is really wonderful.
Yeah.
We really very much support this National Register nomination.
Any other comments from the general public? Yes,
Just
would you now tell us your name?
Sure, Patrick Rossi, also with Preservation Chicago. Just piggyback on your original question, I'm just curious, is there going to be any attempt to stack historic tax credits with low income housing tax credits?
I believe so. I believe that is what the plan is. Yeah.
So there would be certain where the threshold qualified for that. Okay.
Mhm.
So for capital A affordable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are there any other comments from the general public? If not, I will call for a motion to recommend the listing.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. The committee's recommendations for these nominations will be considered by the full commission at its regularly monthly meeting on June 6th. The commission meeting will be held in person here at City Hall in City Council chambers on the second floor and will begin at 12:45 p.m. Details will be posted on chicago.gov/CCL. The commission's recommendations will afterwards be sent to the Illinois Historic Sites Advisory Council, which reviews National Register nominations for the entire state. The program committee will now hear suggestions received by staff for new landmark designations since January 2024. I will announce each suggestion and call on the person who submitted it to identify themselves and the organization they represent, if any, and then make a brief statement regarding the suggestion. Please try to keep your comments and presentations under 5 minutes. Please be aware that no decisions concerning landmark designations will be made at today's meeting. First one is 3978 South Drexel Avenue building, and the suggester is Corky Henderson. Is that person here?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Corky Henderson, and I'm the owner of the building located at 3978 South Drexel Boulevard. Okay, so the image you see on the far left is an image of the building in its current state. So it's the second building from the corner of the 40th and Drexel intersection. And the image next to that is the South Congregational Church, which was built around 1871 or so. And then the image to the far right is inside the building itself, and so you see some of the woodwork, the original woodwork.
Inside of your building?
Yes, yes, I'm
That
sorry.
church is no longer there.
No, the church is no longer.
Right. Okay.
That's what it was, and the significance of the church is that the building that I currently own used to be a parish for the church. Yeah, and so the far image to the far right is again some of the woodwork that's inside the building that I own, that has been preserved, since then. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so, the building met 5 of the criteria that were, shared with me, in terms of designation for Chicago landmarks. So significant historic event. There was a great fire of Chicago that happened in 1871. And so the building was built, a few years after that. So one of the first buildings built within that first decade after the fire. And then in terms of the significant person, so, Drexel Boulevard was actually a donation to the village of Hyde Park, around 1870 by Austrian-born financier Francis Martin Drexel. And also included in this donation was the fountain, which is located at 39th and Oakwood, just at the end of the block where the building is located. In terms of exemplary architecture, the building's original gray stone facade has been preserved since its construction in 1875. And then, as I showed you earlier, some of the woodwork inside of the building has also been preserved as well. The next slide. Work of significant architect or designer. So, like I said, my building was a parish to the South Congregational Church, which was designed by George Edbrook. And it's significant because it was that particular architecture was daring for that time. It's considered the Richardson Romanesque style of buildings, and it's the structure for its tower and one of the first things ever attempted, which was found in the Commission on Chicago Landmarks. And then last but not least, unique or distinctive visual feature. Again, the building's original greystone-like facade has been preserved. And there's been tough pointing since then, but it still remains as is. And that is it. Any questions?
I have a question, Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
I'm just curious, what's your objective in seeking landmark status?
Couple of reasons. So, there was the lot that the building is on and the lot that the backyard is on are 2 different lots. And so I bought the building not knowing that the lot was separate. I mean, the backyard was separate. And so halfway through the deal, I found that out, and I got in touch with the owner, and she wanted to sell it to me for some crazy amount. Since then, someone has bought that lot from her, and he was talking about he wants to put a building back there with a garage at the bottom and 12 residential units. And so, I just feel like if it's designated as and this may not be true, but I just feel like it is designated that would hinder some of what he would be able to do on that lot. So that's one thing. The other thing is just that it's one of the buildings on that block that has its original structure, unlike some of the newer buildings that were built. And so I'm kind of a history person, so I want it to be preserved throughout, whether I don't plan to sell it anytime soon, but as long as it's there, I want it to be preserved. So those are kind of the main reasons.
There's several newly constructed houses around there.
Yes,
Very
definitely.
familiar with.
Yeah, like where the church was, that's now
But to your question, of you landmarking it so the person who bought the lot is limited, I'm gonna ask Mr. Crawford to speak to that.
You'd have to, what I would recommend too is talking to zoning or zoning attorney is that even something that would be allowed per zoning on that rear lot?
Gotcha. Okay.
That's an important question you should know.
Okay.
And the second question is, if you landmark your house will that impinge on what happens on that lot? The answer is no,
Gotcha, okay.
because unless it was all one parcel or one lot, as we would say, it really wouldn't limit, but I would definitely check on the zoning question, because that seems like it's probably way too much to put as a,
Gotcha, okay, thank you.
I might not have.
I wanted you to hear it from the horses.
Yeah.
So you couldn't say, it, but I said, but I'm
Yeah.
not the authority.
I mean, I did talk to the alderman. He said that that would have to come across his desk and he was like, that's not something he would approve, but
Your enthusiasm though for history, and I perceive an affection for this space as well. It's noted.
thank you.
And you have Grant AME Church across the street that. still has
Exactly.
that Same.
Yes, yes.
Next, number two, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House, 4847, Woodline, suggester, Wendy Muhammad.
I have my timer.
And I have mine too.
Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, can I use this to click? Okay, I'll do it. Okay, that way when I need to go fast, I'll know. Okay, so again, my name is Wendy Muhammad and I'm here to request landmarking of the historic home located at 4847 South Woodlawn Avenue. Currently listed on the National Historic Registry by the U.S. Department of Interiors as the Elijah Muhammad House. You see 3 photos of the house here. This is a picture of the home in the 1960s. In 2019, and this is what it looks like currently. It's currently being developed into a house museum. And we're crossing our fingers that will be open by the fall. Lots of historic guests, you will hear, I'm gonna talk faster, I won't list them, but this house was probably one of the single most important pieces of property in modern day Black history, in that the number of, did I do something?
Sorry, you need to share again. We were not seeing the pictures.
Oh, he said you weren't on share.
That working, Kamal?
That's good.
Okay,
Voice from above.
okay. All right, so now that the gods have approved us to move forward, the single most important piece of property in modern day Black history, and that the number of people that came here and met and dined in this house is staggering. The house has a number of different architectural styles. I will show it. This is the east view here. This is the west view here on the back. We kept everything original. We have original limestone, the original copper here. Once we took the paint off of the window, we found this beautiful copper. This is our beautiful walnut staircase that is original and all in place. The home was has been carefully preserved. New plastering. We still haven't done the floors yet. Just wanted you to meet our past tenants. Just in case you wanted to know who was in there since. The original owners and builders of the home were Mr. William French Burroughs and his wife, Miss Louisa Libby. The house was built in 1902 by famed architects Frost and Granger. You know them for the River Forest train station and many other train stations, Penn Station. the Grangers, were meat canners, and you may recognize, if you're old enough, the Libby's Food Company that they ran. They were leaders of the Jewish Masonic Order, and the wife was a member of the Daughters of the Revolution. And they held weekly meetings there with a spiritual design intent. That's me. I talked about the property history. From 1952 to 1972, this was the home of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Two of what we believe are three meetings with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King took place in this home. Architectural styles, we have 4 styles that are kind of merged in one. This is what this train station designer used to do. Chicago Square, vernacular, Italian Renaissance, arts and culture, arts and craft. One thing I want to say, and we're talking about significant events, during the 1968 Democratic Convention, the Black delegates from the convention actually stayed in this home. And if you know anything about the history that happened downtown during that convention, it became very dangerous for a lot of people, but especially the Black delegates who were in Chicago with no budget, no transportation. So Elijah Muhammad went and picked them up, and they stayed here in the home during the convention. The owners put a lot of spiritual construction elements in. There's lots of limestone, lots of copper. We've got 4 different species of wood in the home. They were all used to design and create certain spiritual elements as her husband and his friends were meeting. I'll keep going here. We are doing a lot of restoration in that we're not throwing anything away. So some of these old mantles that used to be fireplace mantles, we've taken and made a mural for the kitchen out of one of Elijah Muhammad's book. The other one is a table that we've actually made. Everything's been completely restored, all new electrical. You see the new windows. Some windows are original, so some are actually 122 years old. Others we've replicated. Just showing you some of our restoration here. We took old copper. This is some of the old copper we took off the house, and we actually made coins. I have one on today. So we're repurposing all of the materials. And I'll quickly go through some of the before and after photos before Reverend Tolliver tells me I've been talking too long. This is the before and after. Okay. Before and after of the east view. This is just the north side of the property. That was the west view. I'm sorry, this is the east view. Wanted you to see some of the wood. This is what the wood looked like when we got the house. And then now we're restoring it. You see that there. Sewer has completely been replaced. A before and after of the south side of the property. If you look really closely there, you'll see the old tenants. See the raccoons? The basement, which used to house a dry cleaner and a barber shop for the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we actually are restoring that and using that in partnership with a couple of universities for research purposes. So we have artifacts that are being donated to us, and we have recordings from never heard before recordings of some really significant conversations that took place there in the home. How much time I got, Reverend Towson?
So-
I'm done? Okay. All right. So that's it. Thank you all. Any questions?
Thank you.
No? Okay.
Our next presentation is Our Lady of Lourdes Church, 4640 North Ashland, and Katarina Garcia is going to make the presentation.
Thank you for having me. I'm Catalina Garcia. I'm president of Our Lady of Lourdes Preservation Society of Chicago. This is Our Lady of Lourdes Church. It is at 4640 North Ashland Avenue on the north side of Chicago. It's designed by Worthman and Steinbach. Okay, so in 1929, Daniel Burnham, a prominent architect and urban developer of Chicago, had a plan to widen the streets of Chicago. In order to widen Ashland Avenue, a crew of 150 men, which you could see in the picture, and horses moved the church from the east side of Ashland Avenue all the way to the west side. They placed the 10,000-ton church on 400 rails and 3,000 rollers, inching its way across the street. And this was thought to be an engineering feat, and it attracted global attention. Next. Once it was across the street, they rotated the church 90 degrees and they cut it in half, which you could see in the picture. There's the trees you could see through the half. They placed a 30-foot insert, which increased the capacity from 800 to 1,200 people. And this part was designed by the prominent architect, Joe McCarthy. To this day, when you go to the church, you could see the half mark on the exterior and interior of the church. So it's truly fascinating to see. Now, an extraordinary feature of the church is the grotto, which replicates the grotto in Lourdes, France. There are national pilgrimage, come and visit the church and pray, and both Christians and non-Christians find peace and solace here. It was open 24/7, 365 days a year, and there are people who have declared miracles after praying in the grotto. And I tried to make it short and sweet, but I believe that the history is very relevant. I'm afraid that if it was sold to a developer and demolished, all of the history will be erased, and that would truly be a shame.
It was short, fascinatingly informative.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're also in support of this as a preservation effort.
We now move on to Olivet Baptist Church, 3101 South King Drive, and Ward Miller will make the presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Tolliver. There we go. Thank you, Commissioner Tolliver and Commissioner Burns. I'm Ward Miller, the Richard H. Treehouse Executive Director of Preservation Chicago. And we're suggesting Olivet Baptist Church here be considered as a designated Chicago landmark. This is at 31st and King Drive. You may recognize it in the photos, except the building on the right is no longer there and the tower has been severely truncated over time. But this was built in 1874 by Wilcox and Miller. It's made out of Joliet limestone with some brownstone detailing, other components as well. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous church. It's really the center in so many ways of the Bronzeville community. And along with such buildings, Pilgrim Baptist Church, which suffered a terrible fire in 2006. And this building is unfortunately falling into incredible disrepair. Sanctuary has been closed for a number of years, and they're worshiping out of the, if you will, East Chapel at the far left side of the frame here. It's a remarkable building. It really does represent a phenomenal component of the neighborhood. It's a cornerstone of the community, and it's just unfortunate it's fallen into disrepair. Joseph Harrison Jackson was the reverend here for many years. He was very noteworthy. He had a little controversy when Dr. King came to town. He didn't necessarily align himself with Dr. King, as various politicos here, even in this building, hadn't welcomed Dr. King. So it's a tough history, if you will, associated with this church. It was also once upon the time, from what we understand, the largest Black Baptist church in the nation, perhaps even in the world. It had thousands and tens of thousands of worshipers. We believe that this is worthy of Chicago landmark designation. We're hoping it may be able to even take advantage of Adopt a Landmark funds, and the congregation is in support of the designation.
Okay, Reverend Jackson was not in support of Dr. King, primarily because Reverend Dr. King's father was a prominent pastor in Atlanta, and they were rivals within the Baptist church. And so that's what the controversy said. And so Reverend Jackson was the president of National Baptist Convention, which at that time many of the black churches belong to. And because of his competition with Reverend King in Atlanta, he marginalized the Son. And so they split and formed what's called the Progressive National Baptist Convention. So it wasn't so much, and yes, he was conservative, but it wasn't so much around King's activities as more so a family feud
Yeah.
around church politics.
Wow.
Okay. And the reason that church was, I don't know if it was ever the largest Black Baptist church, but the reason it was large is because prior to the construction of the current high rises there, that was urban renewal. That's where Black people lived.
Mhm.
And so when those neighborhoods were destroyed, congregation was destroyed.
Mhm.
And that church has no resources, the current congregation, to do anything. Building's been deteriorating for decades.
Yes,
So that's,
tragic.
that nobody else will want it for a church. Because there's also an addition that was built years later, that like an educational center that's just sitting there deteriorating. So it's an albatross that has no economic value to any religious institution. I just throw that out, nor anybody else. So in landmarking it, I think you have to take into concern what the master development plan is for the neighborhood and how landmarking it would complement or detract from the overall current best use of the area. The next one is,
Reverend Tyler, I have a question. If you had a church like this and you decided to repurpose it, would that give it more?
it's too much, it's
No.
not worth repurposing.
It's still a phenomenal building.
It is a phenomenal, but.
And one of the few buildings that survived urban renewal, as you stated, and an amazing story. Thank you, Reverend Tom.
Number 5, the original Providence Baptist Church, 515 North Pine, Ward Miller will make the presentation.
Actually, I'm gonna defer to Patrick, with Preservation Chicago.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'll keep this pretty short and sweet. Patrick Rossi with Preservation Chicago. We are happy to recommend the original Providence Baptist Church, formerly the First Baptist Church of Austin at 515 North Pine Avenue as a City of Chicago win. This historic church, constructed in 1901, represents not only a significant work of architecture, but also a cornerstone of Chicago's cultural social fabric. We believe it to be the second oldest operating African-American Baptist church in the city of Chicago. It was established as the First Baptist Church in Austin, briefly served as Second Baptist Church following the merger in 1960. And since 1972, it's been home to original Providence Baptist Church. We also purchased the property that year. The primary sanctuary, which you're seeing in the foreground here, was designed by the firm of Brown, Burton, and Davis. The adjacent Bible school, which is to the rear in that upper left image, was completed in 1928. That was designed by E.T. Roberts. Any landmark consideration, we would argue, should treat them together as a unified set. In considering the city of Chicago's criteria for designation of Chicago landmarks, we'd argue at minimum that the original Providence Baptist Church meets criteria in 1, 4, 5. Without prejudice to others that might be appropriate, even pending further research. And lastly, as a surviving historic structure in the historically disinvested West Side neighborhood, the landmarking of original Providence would likewise be consistent with the Department of Planning and Development's larger planning goals and efforts to better recognize sites primarily associated with African-American history. Preservation Chicago thanks you for your consideration. We look forward to future discussion of this much deserving landmark candidate.
Thank you. And the last,
Also, Reverend Tolliver, there's somebody here, pastor from Original Baptist.
good to meet you. Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you. The next one is Church of the Holy Spirit, 2651 North Central Park, Ward Miller. Do what? Did I skip one?
Yeah.
Yes.
West Side Community.
Oh, I thought okay, I sure did. West Side, I was looking at the previous slide and it had West Side down there, so
Right, no,
that triggered me to move on.
and Patrick is gonna present this one. Thank you.
Okay, West Side Community Church.
Well, again, Patrick Grassi with Preservation Chicago, staying on the west side, we further recommend the West Side Community Church. Originally St. Paul's Reformed Episcopal Church located at 1937 West Adams Street, the city of Chicago landmark. This historic church, completed in 1886, represents not only the architectural heritage of West Side, but also a vital part of Chicago's cultural, social, and religious history. The architect of record is currently unknown, but it is a modest, though thoughtfully designed, rusticated limestone church with stylistic elements of the Victorian Gothic. In considering City of Chicago criteria, we would argue that at minimum, West Side Community Church meets criterion 1, 3, and 4. Criterion 3 is largely based on the church's association with Samuel Fallows. He was a distinguished minister, that's him pictured on the lower left there. Former college president, superintendent of public instruction in Wisconsin, celebrated author, and one-time bishop of the Reformed Episcopal Church. Like Original Providence, which you just saw, it's also a rare surviving church on the west side of Chicago. All the more remarkable given its proximity to both the United Center, and these pictures don't really reflect this, but it's essentially sited in the midst of a very recent and very considerable expansion by Malcolm X College. So it's essentially hugged by newly constructed buildings. As with Original Providence, the landmarking of West Side would be consistent with DPD's larger planning goals. We do thank you for your consideration and look forward to future discussion.
Probably was in competition with Church of the Epiphany. So many Episcopalians in the neighborhood.
Right. Almost, I have that in my original comments.
Now the Epiphany Center for the Arts, right?
Right. Okay, now Church of the Holy Spirit.
All right, that's me. So this is a really modest one, and it's really unique. This is Church of the Spirit. It's located at 2651 North Central Park Avenue in Chicago, Illinois. This is a spiritualist church, which is one of those kinds of congregations you don't see too often anymore. It was established in the 1890s, and this church building was built in 1903. It is the oldest spiritualist church in Chicago and thought to be one of the oldest spiritualist churches in the nation. It's operated in the Logan Square, Avondale community. It's a simple, actually, even though it appears as though it's a brick building, it's actually a wood frame structure with a covering on it and also a brick entry with brick additions. But this really covers the spiritualist movement that really had its sort of stronghold in the 1880s through the 1920s and still continues today. They communicate with those that have passed on, if you will. It's operated in this location since 1915. So a really early example and a continuing example of a spiritualist church in Chicago. And we find this to be a really interesting component. In 1893, following the Chicago World's Fair, there was a Congress of Religions that was held at the Art Institute of Chicago. And a lot of these faith-based and sort of newer faith-based religions came to light at that convention, if you will. And we really do feel that impacted such things as the Christian Science movement in a really large and significant way. And then other faiths like the spiritualist movement that began out east at Lilydale, New York. So we wanted to suggest this. The congregation is very interested in pursuing a landmark designation of just the exterior of the building. If they were to be considered for landmark designation, they would actually restore the facade on Central Park Avenue if that was desired back to a clapboard. But it's a really sort of interesting story and a story about faith and these different churches and faiths that anchor our communities throughout Chicago. So we wanted to suggest the Church of the Spirit as a potential candidate for Chicago Landmark designation.
Thank you. Thank you for all of your suggestions and for taking time to share your thoughts and information with us. All of the suggestions will now be given to Historic Preservation Division staff for further review. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you for attending.
Thank you for letting us.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. We wouldn't be here without you.